You're listening to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, where we do fast, fun, free daily deep dives into books of the Bible. And right now, we're going through Esther.
When I was a kid, I'd go to the 4th of July parade, and it was magical. The high school kids would dress up. They seemed so old to me at that point. I'm never going to be like that. And they'd put on face paint and clown wigs, and they'd ride in cars, and the cars didn't have tops, and they would throw food at us, like little Snickers bars and Tootsie Rolls and things like that, and you'd scramble out in the street and pick them up. It was just the best. And if you'd asked me at that point, when I was like 5 or 6 years old, what the point of a parade was, I would have said that it's for fun. It's for getting candy. How do I know that that's what I would have said? Because someone did ask me when I was that age. I had my little bowl cut and my little trousers on, and some lady from the newspaper came up in Maquoketa, Iowa, for the Maquoketa Sentinel News Trumpet. I don't know what the newspaper was called. And they did a little article, and the little article was about how the little kids in the town, they liked the parade. It was just the best thing ever. And I think I said something to the effect of, it's fun and you get candy, and that's the point of a parade. But is it? What really historically is usually the point of a parade? It's victory, right? And even that 4th of July parade, it's kind of a commemoration of a victory. I mean, I think that's the point. There's not military regalia and all of that. But the exercise is reminiscent of a celebration of victory. If your sports team wins, you get a ring, you get a trophy, you get to go to the White House if you want to, and what else do you get? Well, you get a gigantic victory parade in your hometown, and everybody's super excited about it. And think about one of the most iconic images from the 20th century, at least in my country. It has to do with a gigantic celebration of winning World War II, and some sailor sees some pretty waitress girl right there in Times Square, and he just leans her back and gives her a big smooch right on the lips. And maybe usually that's not how you want to do things like that, but maybe after you save the world from the Nazis, it's okay to just give the lady the smooch at the ticker tape victory parade. But victory parades are a way older concept even than that. This has been a thing that has been happening forever in the Western world, in the non-Western world, in the biblical world. Obviously, we're talking about the Persian Empire in the 5th century BC. And as we can clearly see from Esther chapter 6, the concept of a parade, a victory parade or a celebration parade to celebrate the military and political awesomeness of a leader, a triumph, if you will. This was clearly a concept in Persian times. There are victory parades that predate this in the Bible, and then there are victory parades that come after this in the Bible. And maybe most famously, the victory parades of the Romans are well documented. Now, Rome, as you'll recall, is divided into two chunks of time, classical Rome, ancient Rome. Up until just a couple decades before the birth of Jesus, you got the Roman Republic, or at least ostensibly you have something that looks kind of democratic. You have a Senate anyway. And then getting started just a couple decades before Jesus is born, you got the Roman Empire, starting with Caesar Augustus. And we have a bunch of great documentation of over 300 different victory parades, which again, the Romans very proudly, and I think with great panache, called triumphs. And surely there are many more triumphs that occurred than the 320 or so that we're aware of and that we have recorded. The way these things would work is if a military leader or a politician, usually those were kind of one and the same, politicians would gain tremendous prestige and wealth by taking a legion or two to go whoop up on some less developed civilization in the outer corners of the world and bring back all of their plunder, and the leaders all shackled up and dethroned and decrowned and everything. And the Romans just ate this stuff up. They loved it, and the leaders just loved it. And the goal of a lot of these politicians, especially in the era leading up to the birth of Jesus, the 1st century BC, the goal of a lot of these politicians was to gain commission to get the Senate to pass a law to let them go out on campaign and to achieve that triumph, to perform well enough in the field that you would be honored by a triumph that would be partially funded by what you took in plunder and partially funded by Rome and taxpayers. And then what would happen is for one day, you would get to be like the king. Now, in the Roman Republic, there was no king. So it was an even bigger deal because for one day, you were literally on top of Rome, figuratively on top of Rome. No, you would go ascend to the highest hill, to the temple of Jupiter. So literally and figuratively, you were on top of Rome for one day. You were allowed, if you got a Roman triumph, you were allowed to wear regal colors like purple. You could paint your face red in honor of the highest Roman deity, Jupiter, and you would be paraded through town with all of these titles and benedictions before the gods and the people being spoken about you. All of these superlatives, the heralds would walk in front of you saying all of this stuff, and your underlings would distribute some of the plunder to the people of Rome so you could earn their loyalty and appreciation. And there's a whole route that you would take when you were on a Roman triumph. By the way, isn't that just such a cooler name than parade or procession? Triumph. And the route would finally lead you right up the Forum, Main Street, center of power Rome, up to the top of the Capitoline Hill, where you would then do some kind of act of obedience, or you'd offer a sacrifice to the Roman god Jupiter, and then there'd be more parties and food and reveling after that. But when the day was over, you had to take off the face paint, and you had to give back the robe. I think you were allowed to hang it up in your house. I think Pompey, after one of his triumphs, hung up his robe and his crown of laurels in like his living room or something. Some people thought it was tacky. Other people thought it was cool. But the point is, when you were done with your king for a day, you had to give it back. And that might sound all cute and adorable to us as modern people who are like, oh, it's sweet and adorable. They had a little parade, a little party, snack stands, and then it was done. It was nice memories for everybody. We'll do it again next year. But it was so much more than that. And that's evident by the fact that people were a little put off by Pompey saving his outfit and hanging it up in his living room. It's made further evident that when Julius Caesar had one of his triumphs, he transgressed the social expectations for how that was supposed to work, and he kept his outfit and even tried to wear it at an event a little bit later on, and people didn't feel real good about that. And in a lot of ways, you can draw a straight line between Caesar transgressing some of those basic expectations of king for a day, but not king for any longer. You can kind of draw a straight line from that to him getting stabbed a whole bunch of times by all of his former friends while he was kind of acting like a dictator, kind of acting like a king a little bit. Every ancient culture would have had an expectation for how to come back and signal to everybody the gigantic victory had occurred. Remember, there's no print media. There's no visual media. You don't even get to know what these generals look like or who they are. And they want you to know what they look like and who they are. That's why they mint coins with their faces on it. That's why they had mass production of sculptures depicting them that were distributed amongst the hoity-toity families. And it's why they would go on parade and give you things and make eye contact with you so that you could know who your betters were and that they could fully bask in all of that prestige. Now, on top of the partying and everything, there was also an artistic, architectural element to this. A lot of these triumphs ended with special monuments being erected. One of the most famous is the Arch of Titus that you can still go see in the Roman Forum. I've spent a long time staring at that. I think it's amazing. It depicts the defeat of the Jewish rebels in 70 AD when the temple got destroyed. And there again, you can see that the people who earned these triumphs really wanted to be recognized, really wanted to be remembered, and the details of what Titus in that example did to Jerusalem and to the temple and to the Jewish people, I mean, they're all right there. Even if you can't read, they're just spelled out with pictures, and that kind of echoes across the ages here, even 2,000 years later. That's exactly what it seems like Haman wants here. He is imagining that he is going to get a triumph when the king asks him, just first thing in the morning, well, what should be done for the man whom the king delights to honor? And Haman gives him this big, long list of stuff in Esther chapter 6. And it all just points to, I want to be king for a day. I want a triumph. He says, bring a royal robe the king is worn, horses the king is ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Let the robe and the horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Then lead this person he honors around through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. Haman thinks he's going to get a triumph, and then the big funny twist here in Esther chapter 6, to an audience who would be very familiar with a triumph and what a triumph means, is that instead the guy who he showed up to work that morning planning to murder Instead, he has to lead that guy around and give him a triumph. I like taking an episode from time to time to go and look at these extra biblical details where we can know stuff outside the Bible about cultural practices and assumptions and values. And I just think it helps us understand how the story would have hit the original audience way, way better. But there's also a whole bunch of stuff about parades and triumphs in the Bible, as I was alluding to earlier. And tomorrow, we are going to look at the ways that this story of Haman's triumph that went awry and ended up becoming Mordecai's triumph, I want to look at some ways that that echoes with some of the other triumphs that occur throughout the Bible. Last thing, I just saw that there's a whole big block of recent reviews and ratings that a bunch of you did. That was really nice of you. I went and read them. They were all really nice. A bunch of them were pretty funny too. So thank you to everybody who has rated and reviewed the program on any and all podcast apps. That is one of the most helpful things you can possibly do to get this in front of other people. And tons of you have. That's really, really nice of you. I read them all. Thank you a ton for doing that. Also, you don't have to do that. You can just listen to the thing. That's fine. That's cool too. All right. That's plenty. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.